I was lying in a hospital bed in Nashville, Tennessee, sweat still drying on my forehead, holding my daughter for the first time in my life, when I called my sister. I'd been in labor for 16 hours. My husband Mark was standing right beside me, exhausted, still in the same shirt he'd worn since the night before, and the only person I wanted in that room besides him was my sister, Danielle. We'd promised each other years ago, back when we were broke college roommates splitting rent on a one-bedroom apartment, that whichever one of us had kids first, the other would be there. No matter what. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. I could hear wind in the background, some kind of outdoor noise, laughter that wasn't mine. "Danielle, she's here," I said, my voice cracking, tears sliding down into my hospital gown. "Emma's here. She's perfect. You have to see her." There was a pause. Then my sister laughed. An actual genuine laugh, light and easy, like I just told her a mildly funny story about traffic. "Oh my gosh, congrats. Listen, I can't really talk right now, we're literally on the boat right now about to do this sunset cruise thing in Cabo. I told you about this trip, remember? A beach vacation sounded way more fun than sitting in a waiting room for God knows how many hours." Another laugh. "Send me pictures though, okay? I'll call you when we land Tuesday." The line went dead before I could say another word. I sat there in that hospital bed, my newborn daughter asleep against my chest, and felt something inside me go completely quiet. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet, the way a room goes quiet after someone slams a door and walks away. Mark took the phone gently out of my hand and set it face down on the tray table without saying anything, because he already knew. He'd known Danielle for 6 years. He'd watched this exact pattern play out at my college graduation, at our wedding rehearsal dinner, at our father's retirement party. Every single time, some version of something better came up. I want to ask you something before I go any further into this story, because I've thought about it every single day since. If your own sister laughed at you the day your child was born and told you a beach vacation sounded more fun, would you have called her back? Or would that have been the last phone call you ever needed her to answer? Because here's what I did instead of crying about it. And it's the part of this story my sister still doesn't fully understand 3 years later. I didn't call her back. I didn't send a single picture. I opened my banking app instead. And I looked at something I'd been putting off dealing with for almost 2 years. A joint account with Danielle's name on it that held more money than she ever imagined I'd actually touch. My name is Sarah Whitfield and I'm 32 years old. To understand why that joint account mattered so much, you need to understand who Danielle had always been, and how I'd spent years quietly protecting her from the consequences of it. Danielle is 2 years younger than me. Growing up outside Memphis, she was the golden child in every sense of the word. The one my parents bragged about at church, the one who never got in trouble even when she absolutely should have. I was the responsible one, the planner, the one who made sure things actually got done. It became such a fixed pattern in our family that by the time we were adults, nobody even questioned it anymore. Sarah handles things. Danielle has fun. When Danielle's marriage fell apart 4 years ago, her ex-husband racked up debt behind her back and left her with almost nothing. I was the one who stepped in. I let her move into my guest room for 8 months. I co-signed a car loan for her because her credit was wrecked. And when she needed help getting back on her feet financially, I opened a joint checking account with her, putting in a starting balance of $15,000, meant to be a safety net while she rebuilt her life. The agreement, spoken but understood between us, was simple. It was there for emergencies, rent if she fell short, groceries if things got tight, not vacations, not spontaneous trips to Cabo with a boyfriend she'd been dating for 4 months. Over the past 2 years I hadn't looked closely at that account, mostly because I trusted her, and partly because I was too busy building my own life, finishing my nursing degree, marrying Mark, getting pregnant with Emma. I assumed the balance was sitting there, untouched except for the occasional emergency withdrawal she'd mentioned to me in passing. Sitting in that hospital bed with my newborn daughter asleep on my chest, I finally opened the account and looked. $4,000 remained of the original 15. Withdrawal after withdrawal over 18 months. A spa weekend in Nashville. A designer purse charged directly from the account at a Nashville boutique. 3 separate flights that matched, almost exactly, the dates of trips she'd posted on social media with captions about needing to treat herself. And the largest withdrawal of all, $2,800, made 4 days earlier. The deposit for the Cabo trip she was on right now. laughing on a boat while I labored for 16 hours to bring her niece into the world. She hadn't just missed my daughter's birth for a vacation. She'd funded that exact vacation using money I'd set aside to help her survive a crisis, treating my emergency safety net like a personal allowance she never had to explain. I sat there with Emma's tiny fingers wrapped around one of mine, and I made a decision I'd been avoiding making for 2 years, because some part of me had always hoped Danielle would eventually grow out of this on her own. She wasn't going to, and I was done waiting for her to. I called my bank's customer service line the next morning, still in the hospital, Emma sleeping in the bassinet beside my bed. It took less than 15 minutes to remove Danielle as a joint account holder and convert it back into a single account under my name only. The remaining $4,000 stayed exactly where it was. I wasn't trying to take anything from her that was legitimately hers. I just wasn't going to keep funding a lifestyle I'd never agreed to fund in the first place. I also did something I probably should have done 2 years earlier. I pulled every transaction record from the account's entire history and printed it out. 18 months of withdrawals lined up in black and white, next to the dates of trips and purchases Danielle had posted publicly online. The pattern was undeniable once you saw it laid out like that. This wasn't occasional overspending. It was a system she'd been running quietly the entire time, one I'd simply never bothered to check. Danielle called me on Tuesday, exactly like she'd promised, sunburned and cheerful, asking to see pictures of Emma before she'd even asked how the delivery went. "So how's my niece?" she said. "Send me those pictures. I've been dying to see her." "The account's closed," I said, my voice completely even. "Your name's been removed." There was a long pause. "What account?" "The joint account, Danielle. The one with $15,000 in it that was supposed to help you get back on your feet after your divorce. I looked at where the money actually went while I was in labor with your niece, since apparently I had some free time between contractions." Her voice shifted instantly, that easy breezy tone disappearing. "That money was mine too, Sarah. My name was on it." "Your name was on it so you could access it in an emergency," I said. "Not so you could fund a boat trip to Cabo the same week I gave birth. Not spa weekends. Not designer purses. I have every transaction printed out, Danielle. Next to every vacation photo you posted with the caption about treating yourself. You're seriously mad about a purse right now? At a time like this, when you should be focused on your baby. I want you to notice something because it's the same thing I noticed the moment she said it. She still hadn't asked how the birth went. She still hadn't asked to hear Emma's middle name, or how much she weighed, or whether the delivery had been hard. 3 years of every conversation I'd ever had with my sister suddenly made a horrible kind of sense. "I am focused on my baby," I said. "That's exactly why I'm not going to keep funding trips you take instead of showing up for her." I hung up before she could answer, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I didn't feel guilty about it. Danielle didn't call again for almost 3 weeks. When she finally did, it wasn't an apology. It was a request for a $2,000 loan, because the credit card she'd used for the Cabo trip had come due and she was short on rent. I said no. It was the first time in our entire adult lives I'd ever said that word to her about money, and I remember my hands actually shaking as I typed the text. She didn't take it well. There were angry messages for a few days, accusations that I was punishing her for having a life, that I'd always been jealous of how easily things came to her. My mother called too, gently suggesting I was being a little harsh, given everything Danielle had been through with her divorce. I let that call go to voicemail the same way Danielle had let mine go unanswered on the day Emma was born, and I noticed my mother didn't call back a second time to check on her actual granddaughter. Something shifted for me in those weeks, quietly and permanently. I stopped waiting for Danielle to become the sister I kept hoping she'd be. I stopped explaining myself every time I said no to something. And I started actually enjoying my daughter's first months without spending half of them managing my sister's feelings about boundaries she'd never had to respect before. 6 months later, Danielle showed up at my house unannounced on a Sunday afternoon, thinner than I remembered, without the easy confidence she usually carried. She sat across from me at my kitchen table while Emma napped upstairs, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, she didn't ask me for anything. "I've been in therapy," she said quietly. "About 4 months now." My therapist had a lot to say about that phone call. About the boat. About a lot of things, actually. She looked down at her hands. I missed my niece being born because a beach sounded more fun than being there for you. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know if you even want me to try. I didn't forgive her completely that afternoon, and I'm not going to pretend I did because that wouldn't be honest. But I let her hold Emma for the first time that day, sitting carefully on my living room couch, and I watched something in her face change in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids splitting rent on that tiny apartment, back when she actually used to show up. She's still working on it. She pays her own bills now. She calls to ask about Emma before she asks about anything else every single time, and she's never once brought up needing money again. I still think about that day in the hospital sometimes, holding my daughter for the first time while my sister laughed about a sunset cruise. And I still wonder about the question I asked earlier, whether you would have picked up the phone again after a moment like that, or whether you'd have done exactly what I did. I genuinely love to know. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my shoes?